A lot of fake news has been filling the current news cycle about Joe Biden's classified documents scandal, and the Praetorian Guard fake news media are doing their level best to protect him by saying that it was no big deal and that what Trump did at Mar-a-Lago was far worse. I'm going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that what Joe Biden did was far worse than anything Donald Trump did, and I will bring the receipts to prove it. And if you stick with me to the end of this video, you will not only know the truth about the classified documents saga, but you will be able to verbally punch your liberal friends in the face with facts who repeat the lies verbatim that the misinformation fake news media is trying to pass off as truth. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring the receipts to the daily onslaught of a radical woke Marxist propaganda. Okay, so I'm going to quickly make two arguments, and then I'm going to prove them. My first argument is that Donald Trump did nothing wrong when it comes to the documents that were held at Mar-a-Lago, despite the liars on the left, including the Democrats, the fake news media, and supposed former intelligence officials and former administration officials of Democrat administrations. In a nutshell, the President of the United States has total authority over declassifying and classifying documents. He can do it at will, and he doesn't have to go through any process to do so. The President of the United States is the only person in the entire country who may classify or declassify without having to go to a higher authority. My second argument is that the Vice President does not have the authority to classify and declassify anything at will. In fact, Joe Biden did not have the right to take classified documents outside of a SCIF. Now, SCIF stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility. What it is it's like a room. It's usually a room that is designated for classified documents and other classified things. Anything in the room has to be secure, meaning that if you're faxing something, it must be on a secure line, and there are procedures and processes that you have to go through unless you're the president. No one can take classified documents outside of a SCIF. There are things known as classified folders where classified documents can go in them and they can leave the room, but that is with an appropriate chain of custody written down and approvals from the highest people in government, and there has to be a damn good reason, none of which Joe Biden followed, okay? And it's very rare to be able to do that compared to the number of times people use a SCIF to take them outside of it. Okay, so those are the two arguments I'm making. Donald Trump was well within his authority and his rights to have the documents at Mar-a-Lago, and Joe Biden had zero authority to have any classified documents outside of a SCIF or government control, and for each one found, he committed a felony separate. Now, the difference here in this video is that unlike the Democrats, the fake news media, and the former officials in Democrat administrations, I'm going to provide the receipts and show you why I'm right and they're wrong, and that's the end of the story. The arguments I make here cannot be broken. I threw in a little Andrew Wilkow there. Okay, there were two court cases that I'm going to talk about. There was a Supreme Court case in 1988 called Department of the Navy versus Egan. And in that case, it shows that the U.S. Supreme Court decision said that there is broad presidential authority over national security, generally over access to classified information in particular, along with United States v. Reynolds, Curtis Wright, and a few other cases. Egan is regularly cited in support of strong, even unchecked executive authority and judicial deference to executive claims. Imagine that. It has become a cornerstone of national security law as practiced today. Therefore, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, knows this, or he should have known this, or he's incompetent, okay? Okay, what I just said was that the United States Supreme Court ruled in 1988, folks, that the President of the United States has broad authority meaning overall authority, when it comes to classifying and declassifying anything. The President of the United States has that, but the Vice President has no such authority. When Donald Trump had those documents sent to Mar-a-Lago, he had already declassified them. And the court said that his broad authority means that a president does not have to go through a process in order to classify or declassify anything. That's another thing that the left has been saying, and the fake news and the Democrats and the former officials. They're saying, oh, he never went through any process. There is no process that's necessary. Okay, the Supreme Court said that. He could point a coffee cup at a document and say, this is classified. And guess what? It's classified. That's what broad authority means. Now, I just told you that the Supreme Court said that a president has broad authority over classifying and declassifying things, so he doesn't have to go through a process. But even so, Donald Trump did. Trump wrote, and look at the date on there, January 19th, 2021. He was still president of the United States. He wrote a memo. It was a memorandum on declassification of certain materials related to the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. So he goes down the list and says that he was declassifying information. This is why the Biden administration was upset. This is why Joe Biden wanted to know what was in those documents that he had at Mar-a-Lago. I personally believe that Biden wanted to see what was at Mar-a-Lago because of what he's going through right now. The Democrats impeached Trump for asking Zelensky on the phone during that famous phone call about the crimes committed by the Biden crime family in Ukraine. Donald Trump, as president, was the chief executive officer of the country, meaning he was the top law enforcement officer as well. He would have been negligent to not ask about any evidence to come forward of criminality by the former vice president in the past administration. Biden was concerned that Trump had documents that would be used against him for the corruption he participated in Ukraine. And here's something to show you how far this corruption goes, how deep it is. You're not going to hear this on the fake news. Oh, they'll tell you later on to save face, but I'm going to tell you right here and now. Okay? The Penn Biden Center was a think tank that was funded with tens of millions of dollars by the communist Chinese. And some of the classified documents were found there. Okay? Guess who ran the Penn Biden Center? Because the fake news media isn't going to tell you. All right? Guess who ran it? Oh, I'll tell you. It was our current Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. He ran the Penn Biden Center. And do you remember that video when that fool Joe Biden was bragging to the Council of Foreign Relations about having the Ukrainian prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, who was investigating Burisma Holdings and Hunter Biden, and Joe bragged about having him fired? Remember that? We all saw the video. One of the men on stage with him, when he was bragging about that, he worked at the Penn Biden Center. You heard that here first. Okay, so the second case was called Judicial Watch versus National Archives and Records Administration. Okay. This case was decided in 2012, and it was presided over by Judge Amy Berman Jackson, an Obama appointee. The argument Judicial Watch made was former President Bill Clinton took secret audio tape recordings from the Oval Office as part of presidential records, and it was reported that he kept them in a sock drawer at the Clinton residence in Chappaqua. All right. So Judicial Watch wanted to know what was on those tapes. They thought the American people had the right to know. All right. Judge Jackson ruled, and I think correctly, that the President of the United States has the ultimate authority on what he determines are presidential records. And she also ruled that the National Archives and Records Administration has no authority over the president to determine what are presidential records. How about that? We have, since the Mar-a-Lago raid, learned that the National Archives didn't give a hoot about those documents because that's the law. A president may take records and keep them if he declares them presidential records, because according to Department of the Navy versus Egan, the Supreme Court said he could declassify anything at any time. But we learned since then that the Democrats in Congress and the White House applied serious pressure to NARA to demand those records back to cause a controversy. They wanted to embarrass Trump and harm his chances of running in 2024. Remember, Joe Biden wanted to see what Trump had because he feared that Trump had evidence against him on his corruption in Ukraine. So there you have it, folks. Donald Trump was well within his rights. And you're going to have liberals that say, well, he refused to respond to a subpoena. He didn't have to respond to a subpoena. Okay? He had executive privilege. The Supreme Court said that he had every right to have presidential records at Mar-a-Lago. It's been that way since 1988. Merrick Garland knew that. Joe Biden knew that. They all knew that. The FBI knew that. But they went ahead and raided him anyway. They had no right to subpoena him in the first place. He did nothing wrong, okay? We also now know that Joe Biden committed massive felonies, all right? Now, I think the thing that they're going to get him on is when he said that they said that Hunter Biden paid $50,000, like $49,910 a month for rent, okay? Joe Biden did not mention that on his taxes. There's over $500,000 that is missing on Biden's tax returns. And remember how during the 2020 campaign when Biden said, why don't you show your tax records, Trump? And he put his out on his website. Well, guess what? They just took them down. All right, so do me a favor, subscribe and like and share this video with your friends and foes so that they can learn the truth about what's really going on. So I'm going to put some links down for you to look this stuff up. Thanks a lot for being with us. We'll see you in the next one.